Welcome to Sharing the Word of God. I'm Joe Johnson, and I'm here to share God's Word with you. And I hope that you'll be able to take something from this message, from something from this lesson, and apply it to your lives, and maybe even share it with others so they can take it and apply it to their lives as well. So let's get into today's message. To start out the message today, I have a picture. You'll see and notice that there are 4 tigers already on the screen. Now there's some other images in this screen that you'll have to look at a little bit harder to kind of find. So I'm going to give you a few seconds, maybe about 20 seconds, to look through this image and see if you can find the other things that are hidden in this image. So go ahead now. All right, so what did you guys see? Did you see anything beyond these 4 tigers? Well, there are some extra things in this image that you should have seen, or maybe not, but let's see. So here's another tiger that's in the image, and yet another tiger. And if you really looked hard into this picture, you would notice that there are 16 tigers hidden in this image. Now, why did I do this? What was the point of this exercise? Well, it was an exercise in looking beyond what is readily visible. Why? Because today's message is about visionaries. Visionaries. So what is a visionary? Well, a visionary is someone who is driven and inspired by what can be. What can be. In other words, they're not necessarily dependent, or they're not held back by what they can't see. They're headed to what can be. They can see beyond what is currently in their area, what's currently here and now. It's kind of like what God, does. I was talking with my wife the other day, and we were talking about the beginning, and we realized that in the beginning there was nothing, and God saw beyond that nothingness and had an idea of what can be, and he spoke it. He said, "Let there be," and it was. That's what God wants for you as well. And he has visions and dreams that he's going to give you, that you are going to be able to achieve and have success in achieving. But there are going to be some things that are going to happen, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So today, let's see what we can find out. We're going to look at the story of Joseph in the Bible. So Joseph is someone who the Bible speaks about, who has an interesting story, and we're going to learn some lessons, some things from Joseph's life and his story. So let's just get a rough understanding of what the story behind Joseph is. We'll start off in Genesis, the 37th chapter, in the 2nd verse. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers. So right off the bat, we know that Joseph was 17 when the Bible picks up with his story, and he had other brothers, and they were tending sheep, and they had flock and livestock. So Joseph had a dream, and he told his brothers that he had a dream, and they hated him all the more for it. He said to them, "Listen to the dream that I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule over us?" So obviously his brothers did not like that dream. They didn't like what he interpreted the dream to mean. And so they were upset even more with Joseph. So things happen in Joseph's life. And let's look at now the end story of this portion of Joseph's life. It says, we're going to start in Genesis, the 42nd chapter, the 41st verse. It says, so Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So Joseph's story starts out with him telling his brothers about a dream, a vision that he has about him being a ruler. And it ends with him being a ruler. That's an interesting story. It's a vision that God gave him and a vision that was fulfilled. But there's more to that story than what we just covered. See, there are some things that happened to Joseph in between the beginning of the story and the end of the story, between him dreaming the dream and the fulfillment of the dream. And so we're going to try and learn some lessons from the things that happened in Joseph's journey to the successful fruition of his dream. And we'll pick up some keys as we follow his story. What we'll learn is, first, what to expect. What you should expect as you're going forward and following and trying to succeed in your dream and the vision that God has given you. We'll also learn what not to do while you're on your journey to successfully achieving your dream. We'll learn what to do while you're on this journey. And then we'll learn why all of this matters, why this whole journey and all the things that you had to endure through your journey and the fulfillment of your dreams and your vision. All right, so let's get into it. Let's find out the things that happened to Joseph on the way to the fulfillment of his dream, and what you need to know and what you can take out of these lessons from his life. So, what to expect? What should you expect as you're going and seeking to fulfill your dreams? Well, let's start out with what Joseph had to go through. So, Genesis, the 37th chapter, the 17th verse. Joseph went after his brothers. Now, at this point, Joseph has told his brothers a dream, and now his father has sent them out to go and find his brothers. They're off with their livestock, with their sheep, and they're helping them graze and everything. So they're out in the field somewhere. And so Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Here comes that dreamer." So, you should expect ridicule on your way to the fruition of your dream, to your vision. Joseph was ridiculed by his brothers. These are his flesh and blood, and they're ridiculing him. So as you go and you follow all of the journey and all of the roads to your dream, to your vision, you need to expect that there's going to be ridicule. There's going to be persecution that's going to come to you. Some people aren't going to like the fact that you have this vision or this dream, this desire to do the things that you want to do. Some people aren't going to like that you came up with it. They're going to think that, well, I should have came up with it, or I could have came up with it, or a whole host of things that they can just ridicule and persecute you with. But the thing that you have to remember is you already expected that to happen. And so you know, you've got an edge now, because you know that these are the things that are going to happen. Ridicule is going to happen. People are going to talk about you. They're going to try and talk about your dream. They're going to try and talk about whether they think it's a good idea, whether they think it's silly or stupid. It's going to happen. So be prepared for it. What next? What else can we learn from Joseph? Well, let's go to our next scripture, Genesis 37 and the 26th verse. So Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. You should expect roadblocks and detours. Now, when Joseph had this dream, I'm pretty sure he didn't think that it would take him to Egypt. And I'm pretty sure he didn't think it would take him to Egypt as a slave. But his own brothers sold him out, and now he's on his way to Egypt. That's a roadblock. That's a detour. He's thinking, I'm going to be here with my brothers, and I'll be ruler here, and everything will be good, and we'll be happy. Now he's on his way to another land, to another place, and he's in bondage. You should expect roadblocks and detours. Things aren't going to go the way that you expected them to go. And sometimes they're going to go the opposite direction. Sometimes you're going to meet up with some obstacles, some things that are not going to go the way that you wanted to go, and they're going to be a hindrance to you. And sometimes you're going to have to go a different direction. Those are roadblocks. Those are detours in the road to your vision, the road to your dreams. And they're going to happen. But what you have to do is you have to remember that it's just a part of it. It's just a part of it. And the truth of the matter is God is in control. And he already knows about the roadblocks. He knows about the detours. A lot of them, most of them, he's the one that came up with the roadblock because he was trying to get you to go a different way, or he knew about the roadblock and he's already designed a detour. See, so expect them. If you expect them and you know that God's got it, then you don't have to worry about it. You just know that they're a part of the plan. So expect roadblocks and detours. What next? What else can we come up with? Well, we can look at what not to do on the way to our journey, or on our journey to our dreams, to our visions. So, what should you not do while you're seeking to achieve your vision, your dreams? Well, first, don't get discouraged. We see the things that have happened in Joseph's life. He's been ridiculed and been sold into slavery by his own brothers. And that can be a hard thing. We say it roadblocks, detours, and we say it ridicule. But you can't get discouraged by those things. You can't let those things get you down. You just have to keep on doing what you're doing, keep on pressing forward, keep on marching forward, and you'll be successful. But just don't get discouraged. Don't let things get you down. Right? All right. What else? What's next? What should you not do on the way to your vision, to your dream? Don't get focused on the negatives. See, we said already, don't get discouraged. Don't get focused on the negatives. If you'll notice on this slide I have this little film strip, And you can look at the film strip and it's a negative. It's a negative film strip. And it has some negative things on it. It's naysayer and you can't do that and that's impossible. See, those are the negatives. And if you focus on those things too long, you'll become discouraged and then you may even try and want to give up. The negatives, they're going to happen. There are going to be a lot of negatives, but there's also going to be a lot of positives. Focus on the positives. Pay attention to the positives. Encourage yourself with the positives and let the negatives handle themselves. You can make plans and try and overcome the negatives. You can learn from the negatives. You can learn lessons. You can learn what not to do. But don't get focused on the naysayers, the negative things that people say. Don't get focused on that's impossible. Guess what? It was a dream that God gave you. It's possible. So don't get focused on the negatives. Next, don't get tunnel vision. You know what tunnel vision is? Tunnel vision is just like this image. You're surrounded by walls and you can only go and only see where these walls take you. Tunnel vision keeps you stuck in one frame of mind, one frame of vision. You don't want to get tunnel vision. You want to be able to see a wide range of possibilities because there's going to be so many different ways and so many different avenues for you to go, for God to lead you through these things. And if you get stuck with the tunnel vision, if you get stuck in one way of doing things, you won't be able to allow God to lead you. And it may be you may be led through some wisdom that someone else gives you. You may be led through just an idea that comes up, or you may be led by God showing you another part of the vision that is going to take you there. But if you're in tunnel vision, if you're stuck in this one way of doing things, you won't be able to change, or you won't be able to redirect to take advantage of those that wisdom and that information. Don't get tunnel vision. Don't get stuck in one frame of mind. There's going to be a lot of wisdom out there. You're going to have people around you who are going to be able to guide you and give you valuable information on how to do things. Don't get stuck thinking your way is the only way. All right. What's next? Myopic vision. Don't get myopic vision. What is myopia? Myopia is a condition that is what led to these things right here that I have on my face. Myopia, people with myopia have good nearsighted vision. They can see things near, but things that are in the distant, they just can't really see very good. They have poor distance vision. So how does that apply to your life, and how does that apply to your vision and your dream? Well, if you get myopic vision when it comes to your dreams and your visions, you get stuck with what's happening right here around you. You get stuck with those things, those negative things that people are saying, those ridicules that people are launching at you. You get stuck in the moment instead of being able to see into the future. And that's what visionaries are about. They're about seeing what can be, the thing in the future. And if you develop a myopic view of your life and of your dream and your current circumstances, you're no longer looking through visionary eyes. You're looking through myopic eyes. Don't get myopic vision. Keep that visionary focus on the future and what your destiny and what your vision and dreams are, and keep going forward. That's what not to do while you're on your way to fulfilling your dreams and your visions. So let's talk about what you should do. What things you should do as you're on your way to your vision. Let's go back and look at Joseph's story again. And we're going to be here at the 39th chapter of Genesis, starting at the first verse. So when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of the Egyptian master. And I highlighted everything he did for a reason. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. Take advantage of opportunities. It would have been easy for Joseph to have a pity party, to go into the woe is me attitude and mindset, because he's been sold into slavery by his brothers. They threatened to kill him. They ridiculed him, and now he's a slave in Egypt. But he took advantage of the opportunity that was given to him. He was sold to the captain of the Egyptian army and the Egyptian soldiers, and he made the most of it. He did everything to the best of his ability, and he did everything the right way. He didn't just slack off. He didn't say, oh, well, I'll do as much as I just need to do just to get by. He did everything he could to take advantage of that opportunity, and it was noticed. And now he's in charge of the entire household. So you have to take advantage of those opportunities. Things are going to come to you while you're on your way to your dreams, to your visions. Take advantage of those opportunities. It might not be something that's specifically designed for where you're trying to go, but it'll be an opportunity for you to learn something new. It'll be an opportunity for you to gain some wisdom and some knowledge. Sometimes the opportunity is learning how not to do something, how not to operate in a position or operate in a job or do a task. Sometimes you're learning how not to make the mistake that others people are making. So that's an opportunity. That's an advantage that you can take. So take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you. Next, Joseph is thrown in jail. Okay, so Joseph is in the household of Potiphar. He's now in charge of the entire household. And Potiphar's wife makes a pass at Joseph. She comes on to Joseph, and he rejects that pass. She got upset, and she told her husband that Joseph came on to her. This infuriated Potiphar. So he threw Joseph in jail. And so while Joseph's in jail, he could have, again, pouted. He could have, woe is me, everything's going bad, I'm always getting the short end of the stick. But let's look at what Joseph did. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. So Joseph's now in charge of everything that's happening in the prison. Okay, first he starts out, he's in slavery, he's a slave in Potiphar's house. He does everything he can. He takes advantage of the opportunities given him, and he's made basically in charge of everything. He's given charge of the whole household of Potiphar. That falls through. Something happens. He lands in prison. he takes advantage of that opportunity as well. And he does everything that he can to be success in it. And it's noticed. And now he's in charge of everything in the prison. So what does that mean? What can we take? What lesson can we take from this? Be consistent. Keep doing what you're doing. I know that things will get hard sometimes. Times will, things won't go the way you expected them to go. They won't go your way. They'll go the opposite way. But you got to be consistent. You got to do everything you can to take advantage of opportunities, and you got to be consistent in doing the best of your ability to get the job done. Be consistent, and that's all you can do. And just like Joseph was noticed, you're going to be noticed as well. See, this is how you climb the steps of success, because you're consistent in what you do and it's noticed, and you consistently climb the stairs, just like Joseph's climbing the stairs of success on his way to fulfilling his dream. Be consistent. Keep doing what you're doing. All right. So we get to the end of Joseph's story. Joseph becomes chancellor. He is crowned by Pharaoh. He's gone through slavery. He's gone through prison. And now some things happen, and Joseph comes to Pharaoh's attention, and Pharaoh decides that Joseph, just like everybody else that has noticed, that Joseph is successful and the Lord is with Joseph, and he's successful in everything he wants. And now Pharaoh wants him on his team. He wants him to be the head. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. He was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. See, that's the story of Joseph. And all of these things that Joseph went through, and all of these lessons that come out of Joseph's story, you should apply to your story and your life, and how you just do things, not just in your journey to fulfill and succeed in your dreams, but just in life in general. That's the way you live life. That's the way you do things in life. You try to stay encouraged. You try not to get discouraged. You try to keep doing things and not getting focused on the negative. You try to just be consistent and take advantage of opportunities. That's what Joseph did, and those are the lessons that he learned, and that's how he got to climb the ladder of success and become second to only Pharaoh in the land of Egypt. So let's move on to our next thing. Why does this matter? Why does this matter? What is so important about these lessons? Well, obviously it's preparation. We see that Joseph was being prepared for everything that came his way. But what else? What is it preparing us for? It's preparing us for the people that God is going to use us, to use you to bless. See, that seemed like the end of Joseph's story. It wasn't the end of Joseph's story. If you remember, the part about him being a ruler came out of the fact that there were these sheaves in the dream that were around his, and they were bowing down. Those were to be his brothers. So let's go to the next part of Joseph's story, this last part. There's a famine in the land, not just the land of Egypt, but the entire land all around it, including where Joseph came from. So there's a famine happening, and Joseph's family, back where he came from, is being affected by it as well. And so Joseph's father heard about the fact that in Egypt there was actually still grain there. There was still food and substance there. So this is what he says. We're in the 42nd chapter of Genesis, starting at the first verse. When Jacob heard that grain was available in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you standing around looking at one another? I have heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy enough grain to keep us alive. Otherwise, we'll die." So he's sending Joseph's brothers down to Egypt now. Now remember, Joseph's in charge. Since Joseph was governor of all Egypt and in charge of selling grain to all the people, because Egypt had a surplus of grain, it was to him that his brothers came. When they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. Then his brothers came and threw themselves down before Joseph. "Look, we are your slaves," they said. But Joseph replied, "Don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so that I could save the lives of many people." So Joseph, his brothers have done some really awful things to him. And you get down to the end of the story, and well, obviously this dream that he had came to fruition because, well, they bowed themselves before him. He was a ruler. That's what happened. But remember, this was all preparation for what? Because God was preparing him for the people he was going to have to, that he was going to be used to bless. And remember, he's got these things that happen. But Joseph says to himself, okay, but God used me in a greater way. So I have to do what? I have to offer mercy and forgiveness to my brothers. And he said to them, get up, don't worry about it. This is what God planned. And he planned it so that I could not only be a blessing and gain from this, but also bless other people. And he offered mercy and forgiveness. And that's what you have to learn. That's what you're going to have to understand when it comes to your vision. Yes, it's going to be a blessing to you. But if you think that that's the only reason God is giving you this vision and blessing you in this way, then you're wrong. It's not just for you. It's so that he can bless others through you as well. And so some of those people are going to be people who ridiculed you, who's had said negative things to you about your dream, your vision, about where you were going. There are people who caused and inflicted pain on you, inflicted harm. They caused you to have to go the wrong way, detour, change, all of these things. You're people who you're going to have to forgive, because guess what? God's going to use you to bless them. So the last thing we're going to cover is starting to forgive. And I'm just going to go over some steps. This is not how to forgive. It's a framework, or it's some steps that you can have in your pocket to at least start the process, to get you started on the process of forgiving anyone that you're going to need to forgive, that you need to forgive, or that you that has wronged you. So first thing, let's try and understand the reason behind the action. Why did they do it? What was the reasoning behind what they did? Now, if you notice, I said the reason behind what they did, not the explanation, not the excuse. It's the reason, not an excuse. It doesn't excuse the behavior. It doesn't mean that the behavior was correct or right. It just means that something was behind what they did. And you want to try and understand that. That's going to help you move towards the forgiving process. Next, you want to separate the person from the action. What does that mean? Separate the person from the action. A lot of times, what we in society and as people have a tendency to do is we have a tendency to label people. And labels are good for categorization. They're good for statistics. They're good for a lot of different things. They're not good for being human, being decent, being a Christian. Labels, once you get applied with a label, it's very hard to remove that label. It's just like being, it's just like a can of soup. You look at a can of soup and it's got that label on it, and that label is pasted on there. Now, it's obviously there so you know what the contents is of the inside of it is. But what happens when the content changes? I mean, assuming that the content changes, you probably don't want your soup's content changing, but I digress. So the point is, when you apply a label to someone and it gets stuck on them, it tends to get stuck to the point where even if they change, even if they're different, they still got that label on them. They're still slapped on the forehead with this label that says, I am liar. They're not a liar. They're someone who lied. They're not a thief. They're someone who happened to steal. And a lot of times remember, we got the reason behind it. Not an excuse, a reason behind it. And once you figure out that reason, and once they address the reason and the cause behind it, what's left? The label. So anyway, the point is, it's a person who did a bad action, not a bad person per se. All right? So separate the person from the action. Third, accept your human frailty. Now, this one deals with you yourself. What do I mean by accept your human frailty? There is a point in the story of Joseph that you kind of got to dig into and kind of look into to kind of get the understanding of his struggle with coming to grips with his brothers showing up. The idea that Joseph wasn't upset, that he wasn't angry or struggling with the idea that his brothers were coming, they were coming for food, they were there in his presence, and he had all of these things that came up from the past, that these emotions and everything. You can easily miss that in the scripture if you just kind of gloss over it. But there were some human things, human feelings and emotions that Joseph had to deal with. And guess what? You're going to have emotions, you're going to have feelings, you're going to have things that that are going on with you dealing with this situation. And you have to accept that that's what's going on. It's how you feel. It's not going to be always, and you understand that. You have to understand that those are emotions and they're not going to last forever, but accept that that's your human frailty. That's part of your human frailty. You're not perfect. You're not God. You're gonna struggle with the situation and things in some instances of moving towards forgiveness. Accept that human frailty. This leads to the last point. Remain open to the possibility of forgiving them. Remain open to the possibility of forgiving them. See, all of these things, we're not even to the point of forgiving in these starting to forgive. This is just a framework or just some steps to just keep that, to get you to the point of where you can start even a process of trying to forgive. It's leaving you open to that possibility of forgiving the person happening. And I don't know when that's going to happen. You don't know when that's going to happen. But when it happens, you still want to be open, because the main thing that we have to agree with is that God wants us to forgive. He wants us to walk in forgiveness, walk in mercy and grace, because he's forgiving. And so he wants us to walk in the same forgivingness. But until that happens, we have to, this goes to that human frailty. This is just where we are, and this is just where you are. And you're open, though. You're not saying, I will never forgive that person. I will never let that go. I'm not going to. Remain open to the possibility of forgiving them. So, those are the steps to walking towards forgiveness. Now, this one right here, this is not necessarily a step for starting to forgive. This is more along the lines of something that you can do just to give yourself room to breathe in the atmosphere of other people. This kind of goes back to this human frailty aspect. Leave room for people to make mistakes. Well, none of us are perfect. None of us get it all right all the time. And when you leave room for people to make mistakes, you not only make it easy for people to come and admit their mistakes and say that, hey, I got it wrong, because they know you're not going to blast them for it. You're going to say, okay, well, how do we address this? Let's look at how we fix this. They know that you're not going to do that, because you leave room for people to make mistakes. And it makes it easy for you, because you're able to now go and deal with the mistakes that people make, or deal with your mistakes. Because I leave room for people. Okay, I made a mistake. Can I get the room now? Can you give me some room for? So leave room for people to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. So let's just do that. Let's just make sure that we're giving that opportunity, leaving that room for those things to just be a part of life. All right. So let's do a quick recap. We've gone over quite a bit. Just going to do a quick recap so you can remember some of the things we did in the beginning, said in the beginning, and some of the things that we have come to at this ending part. First thing is, you got to expect ridicule, roadblocks, and detours. Those things are just going to happen. It's a part of the journey. So expect them to happen, and you'll be ready when they happen, and you can move and adjust and shift as according to the necessity of your journey. Next, don't get discouraged. Try your best to stay encouraged. Focus on the positive things. There's always going to be something that you can pull out of your day that's an encouragement. There are going to be tons of things you can possibly say that were discouraging. Find that encouraging thing and stick with it. Focus on it. And don't get focused on the negatives. Don't get focused on the negative things. And don't get myopic vision. Don't get stuck in this single-eyed vision and stuck with what's going on around you and what's happening right now. That happened today, but remember, there's a ton of other things that happened in that day that you can look at and say, that was a good thing, though. So don't get focused on the negative, and don't get myopic vision. Take advantage of the opportunities. There's going to be tons of opportunities that avail themselves to you, and you need to take advantage of them. Now, word of advice. Everything that looks like an opportunity is not an opportunity. Some things are what I'll call tricks and traps. They're tricks and traps. You got to be wise enough to know this right here. It's disguising itself as an opportunity, but this is really a trick. This is really a trap. I'm not falling for that. So be mindful, be wise, take advantage of opportunities, but be wise enough to know the difference between an opportunity and a trick and a trap. All right? Be consistent. Just keep doing the best that you can. Just keep doing your very best. The very best you can do. And people will notice. It'll be seen and it'll be noticed. And as you go on, people will remember that stuff and it'll help you as you're climbing up the ladder of success. All right? Finally, be open to the possibility of forgiving. Remember, the people that you passed, that ridiculed you, that demeaned you, that caused you names, that caused you trauma and heartache and bad emotions, you're gonna run right back into them on the way back from the vision, because guess what? God's gonna use you in some way. Maybe it's to help them to change the way they're living, the way they're acting, or whatever they're doing. But if you're not open to the possibility of forgiving, you're not going to be open to the possibility of helping. So you got to be willing to at least remain open to that possibility. All right? So there you go. We've come to the completion of this lesson. Again, I pray that something in this lesson blessed you, that something in it gave you something that you can apply to your life, something that you can take with you and maybe share with others as you walk along this journey of life. So until the next time, God loves you and so do I. Be blessed.